Today, on the 1UpBeat, we'll be listening to music by me, Grant Kirkhope.
Highlighting the best symphonic game music from every generation, this is the 1UpBeat on Cinematic Sound Radio.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the 1UpBeat, and thanks to composer Grant Kirkhope for being the first composer to contribute to an episode. Hopefully it makes for an even better listening experience and we can do more of this sort of thing in the future. After doing the Yoko Shimomura episode last year, I thought it would be cool to do a deep dive into one composer's work every year. When considering who to feature, Grant Kirkhope seemed like an obvious choice. It became even easier when I featured precisely none of his music from ukulele during the Best of the Year show, and Mad Monster Mansion was left out of the suite from Brassylvania from the Best Arrangements of 2019 show. I figured I owed it to the guy to just show how special his music really is. Grant Kirkhope was born on July 10th, 1962 in Edinburgh, Scotland. His initial musical influences were from his father, who was a big fan of Frank Sinatra and Glenn Miller. He started teaching himself guitar at age 11, opposite his classically trained trumpet playing. Between the early big band influences, classical trumpet studies, and his time playing with the rock bands Little Angels and Tribe, Kirkhope was exposed to a healthy variety of musical styles, which made the transition to composing even easier.
So, like, at school, I was, first of all, I played recorder when I was 4. I remember bringing around recorders and saying, he wants to play a recorder, and it was like 15 shillings, which is like, ancient currency. I'm so ancient. And I put my hand up thinking, I want to do that. I don't know why. And then they brought around a cornet when I was 6 and in a shopping bag and said, he wants to play this. I got my hand up first, and so I got to play that. And I did the proper sort of classical trumpet playing thing, in the UK, you do these things called associated board exams. It's grades 1 to 8. So I did all those, over the years kind of thing. Started playing, guitars when I was about 12, sort of self-taught, like playing in, poppy bands when I was a kid, but got more rocky and metally as I went on. So I think, all the time I was doing the classical trumpet playing in the local orchestras. I played in the North Yorkshire County Symphony Orchestra, which I thought was like the LSO to me. It was like this big, the whole county orchestra, which was like full of amazing people. I couldn't believe it. But I never once thought about being a composer ever. Like, that was just not ever in my head. Like, I wrote songs for the metal band I was in, but when I was at the Royal London College of Music doing a 4-year music degree as a classical trumpet player, I failed the harmony exam 3 years out of 4. You have to pass it once before you can graduate, and I failed it the first 3 years, miserably. And only managed to scrape past in the last year by the skin of my teeth, So, composing was definitely not on my radar because I was so bad at understanding harmony. But I would say that I guess I didn't really want to be a trumpet player. I just did it because it was 4 years of not getting a job, probably. But one big thing from being at the Royal London College of Music was that the college orchestra rehearsed every Tuesday and Thursday morning from like 10 till 1 or something like that. And I don't think I missed that ever in 4 years being there. That was amazing to me, like watching them, play some of the fantastic works like, Hindemith and Stravinsky, Firebird, and, just tons of stuff. I can't think what they are now. But it's great to see people do that and listen to them rehearse, because they're all getting rehearsed and, all that stuff that you maybe use later in life, you don't realize that you're learning at the time. So I feel like that was a really brilliant thing for me to do.
Kirkhope joined Rareware on October 15, 1995, and was first tasked with converting David Wise's music from Donkey Kong Country 2 to the Game Boy, starting with the title screen music. It was a programming challenge that he had to figure out how to convert the Super Nintendo music to play through the Game Boy sound system with its severe limitations.
I had a friend, Robin Beanland, who was a keyboard player in one of the local bands that I played for. And he one day announced that he'd up and got a job. I was like, what? Like, no one that I knew got jobs. Everyone that I knew was mostly, playing in bands or on tour or signing on to unemployment insurance, which I did for 11 years. He said, Grant, he won't have to look at Rare. I couldn't believe it. And so he'd been there about a year and a half. He said to me, Grant, you've been on unemployment benefit, on and off for 11 years. Don't you think it's time you got a job? And I was like, well, I suppose so, but what can I do? So why don't you try do what I'm doing? Why don't you try write music for computer games? I was like, well, I've no idea if I can do it or not. So he recommended that I get a copy of Cubase, an Atari ST with a meg of RAM, and I got a synth module, Proteus Effects, and I set about writing music, that I thought was appropriate for video games, and I played a lot of games at the time. And I sent 5 cassette tapes off to Rare over the course of 1994, it must have been, and never got a reply. And then out of the blue, I got a letter saying, please come for an interview, and can you bring with you write 3 pieces for the interview. It was like a Batman-style orchestral piece, like a Mario platformer, and like a guitar-based sort of fighting game piece. So I wrote those quickly in a week and went down for the interview. And Dave Wise interviewed me along with Simon Farmer, who was the general manager at Rare. And that was a Friday. And on Monday, I got a letter saying I got the job. Couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, I never had a job before. It's like an alien concept, So that was it. Packed up my stuff and moved down to Twycross. That's where the company was. I went to live in Coleville and then Ashby-de-la-Zouch in the Midlands, and started work at Rare on October 15th, 1995. And that was it. Proper job.
Kirkhope's first composition job was on 1997's GoldenEye 007, the beloved video game adaptation of the 1995 film. He worked with Rare composer Graham Norgate on the score, and Robin Beanland did the elevator music. Kirkhope's first solo score, and what he's probably most well known for to this day, is his music to Banjo-Kazooie. The series wasn't always about a bear and a bird duo saving the bear's sister from an evil witch. It started out as Project Dream on the Super Nintendo and later the Nintendo 64. The soundtrack to Dream is available to listen to online and is easy to find on YouTube and elsewhere. When you listen, if you know the Banjo-Kazooie music, you'll hear a lot of familiar themes. Banjo-Kazooie was released on June 29, 1998 in the US and a month later in European territories. It would be followed by 2 sequels, one in 2000 on the Nintendo 64 and one in 2008 on the Xbox 360. This is probably the game that really cemented that Grant Kirkhope style that everyone recognizes today. The first track he wrote was the tune for Click Clock Woods, but it wasn't until writing Mumbo's Mountain that he really touched on what makes the banjo sound what it is.
So, it is a bit weird that banjos lasted the test of time, like 20-odd years, which is really peculiar. And like when you write it as a composer, I don't think you ever think that it's going to last that long. Especially with a game, you think maybe, 6 weeks, 6 months, and people are going to forget about it. So it's kind of weird that it's kind of gone on so long. But obviously hugely gratifying and very humbling. I mean, I must have done something right, It was weird because when Dream got converted to banjo, and Dream was like a Mario RPG type game, it was like, right, Grant, you have to write some kind of jolly platform tunes now. Get on with it. That's what the heads of the game sort of told me. And let's see if you can do it, because I was still sort of a bit unproved, I suppose, at Rare. I'd done GoldenEye, but it was a different thing. Can you write platform music? But as the game kind of got more going, I kind of hit upon that tritone thing, that tritone umpari thing. I think originally I was trying to find a way to use dark harmonies, like sort of the kind of Danny Elfman, kind of dark harmony thing from Mad Monster Mansion, but not scare the kids. And how would I do that, without, in a platform game? So I was listening to Beetlejuice, and I just thought, this is like a dark harmony, but it's all umpar. It's kind of, I thought, so that's, the trick is that you can write as dark as you want, but as long as the rhythm's jolly, no one's going to get that scared. Or at least that's what I thought. So that kind of, a little light bulb went on, going, oh, this could be possible. And I was thinking about Banjo-Kazooie, and thinking about the characters are opposites, therefore, a tritone is the furthest point away from, in a scale, like a C to F sharp, that's the furthest point away. So I thought, so the 2 characters are opposites. Banjo's a bit of a dumb, bear. Kazooie's a bit of a intelligent, wisecracking, sarcastic bird. So that would be it. So I kind of started doing the umpar with the tritones, and that was basically that was a Banjo-Kazooie sound. And I guess Mumbo's Mountain was that one where I'd written a tune for that already. And Chris Stamper, one of the bosses, said, we don't think it. The rest of the music sounds, because I kind of written other stuff, before that or after that. He said, when I'd kind of got the tritone thing at that point, he said, we think you need to go back and revisit Mumbo's Mountain and Treasure Trove Cove because they don't sound like the rest of the game. So, all that tritonic things, really, really worked for them. It really, and also I think thinking about that game, we were trying to beat Mario 64, right, which was fantastic. We all had it at Rare, played it, thought it was amazing, and I realized that there was no point in me trying to copy that Nintendo sort of poppy jazzy style because they're really good at it and I'm really bad at it, so it would be awful. So I had to find something else that would perhaps be me. I mean, not thinking sort of anything super grand like it's gonna last forever, etc. I was just thinking I need to find something that's different so they don't say I'm copying. And I think often you don't really think about it that carefully. You don't really think. You just do your best at the time, right? Like I didn't know it was people were still gonna like it in 2020. It's just you just do your best, like I guess like anybody does. But it was one of those things where, and I thought I did feel I had to prove myself. I thought, well, this is my own game. I do all the sound effects, all the music, and I better not mess it up. So that was a super rewarding thing to do, and I felt like it was, I could give the game my own sort of signature sound. That the kind of what I felt in the sound effects too. The whole thing where everything matched together because I did it all. And it's nice to do that, But games get to such a size these days, you just can't possibly do that.
There's not much to say about the score to Banjo-Kazooie that hasn't already been said a million times. Every track in the original game's score is unforgettable. It's been 22 years since the game came out, and I still get some of the themes stuck in my head every once in a while. We're going to play some tracks from 2008's Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, the Xbox 360 game. We're using this game for the show because it includes themes from all 3 games in the series, and gives us a bit of an opportunity to talk about the City of Prague Philharmonic Orchestra. All the music you'll hear on today's show was recorded with them. The City of Prague Philharmonic Orchestra was founded in 1947, right after World War II, as the in-house orchestra for the Baravalov Film Studios. They later privatized and went through some name changes until they got to their current name in 1992. They're one of the most prolific orchestras in the world.
So I got involved with them. So like at Rare, Stephen Burke started at Rare in the 2000s sometime. I'm not sure what the year was. And I was doing, I think, Grab by the Ghoulies probably, something like that. So it must have been bought by Microsoft. So it must have been, 2000. I don't know. Well, I can't remember. Anyway, so he started. And he had experience with orchestra before. So he suggested, he was doing Cameo, that, it would be possible to record it with a live orchestra. And I was like, right at the end of Grab by the Ghoulies. So I didn't get the chance to do it. So he said, he knew Nick Rain, I think. And I think he knew James Fitzpatrick, who's so Nick Rain is the kind of conductor guy, orchestrator that we've used. He also conducts. And James Fitzpatrick is the kind of contractor for the orchestra. He'd done it for years and years and years. And James and Nick were, good, brilliant friends. So Steve went off to do that, and we went across for a day to kind of see it. And it was like, it's incredible when you get real people playing your music. Not only is that spectacular and like, you're in tears most of the time. When human beings play music, they do things just naturally without being asked to do it, like just little crescendos, little diminuendos, little things that you may not be in the music, but it's just a natural phrasing of a human being. It just makes it so much better than trying to do it with MIDI. Even though you can get great results with MIDI, I think having real people do it, there's nothing like it. It just is so much better. So, it was just a really, really fantastic experience. And I remember when they first kicked off playing the first intro to the first piece on Viva Piñata, I just couldn't believe it. It was like, oh my God, this is incredible. So that was such a positive experience doing that. It was just absolutely amazing. And then we went back again for Viva Piñata 2. And I went back again for Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, kind of thing. And I went back again for Kingdom of Amalur Reckoning after that as well, and also for some Mario Rabbids as well. Because I say, I think it's such a good relationship with Nick and James that I have, because we're just friends, and it just makes it all the more pleasurable to go there and do it. And you kind of end up writing with that orchestra in mind, which is super cool. And also they're sort of playing, they play day in, day out, that orchestra, with score after score after score. So they just get better and better and better. And you know, they get used to using click tracks and all that stuff that perhaps orchestras who don't do it very much aren't used to. It's just fallen off a log for them now, you know. So, and you get tons of people being out there from Hollywood to record. As I said before, there's nothing like having real people play your music, and just it's just you just run out of superlatives. You really do. It was fantastic and has been fantastic.
This is music from Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, which includes themes from Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, music composed by Grant Kirkhope and performed by the City of Prague Philharmonic Orchestra.
You are listening to the 1UpBeat on Cinematic Sound Radio.
Grant Kirkhope would go on to write the scores for 3 more games at Rare until one of the biggest moments in gaming history happened. Microsoft bought Rare outright for $375 million. Along with it went some of Nintendo 64's biggest game franchises, like Banjo-Kazooie, Perfect Dark, and the then-in-development cameo Elements of Power. The first fully original game by Rare for Xbox not counting Cameo or Perfect Dark or the Conquer port, because there was definitely no other Rare games that were released on Xbox in 2003, was a game called Viva Piñata. Viva Piñata is a life simulator game where you tend to a garden on Piñata Island that's been neglected. This beautiful and relaxing game deserves a similar score, and Kirkhope delivers a masterpiece. You'll once again hear some unused themes that were from way back during the Project Dream days, but the gorgeous nature of this score can't be understated just by pointing out the fact that there are old themes in here. Viva Piñata ended up becoming a popular media franchise with sequels and a kids' TV show. It's kind of been gone for a little while at this point, but at the time when Rare was kind of synonymous with Xbox, it was very popular and kind of a mainstream thing. But I sort of feel like people have unfortunately forgot about it in recent years. How does Mr. Kirkhope feel about Viva Piñata all these years later?
Viva Piñata, originally Steve Burke was doing the game. And he was doing all of it, and I was probably finishing off Grabbed by the Ghoulies, I think. It must have been about that time. And then it was said, well, look, Steve, he was also doing Cameo, I think, at the same time. And so it said, Grant, when you finish Grabbed by the Ghoulies, can you take over doing the sound effects? I said, all right, I'll do that. And then I think Steve got mega busy on Cameo, and so they said, look, Grant, can you do Viva Piñata? So Steve had written some music for Viva Piñata. Some of the romance dances, maybe 20 or so are his. So I was brought along to do it. So when I looked at the game, I just couldn't help thinking about that kind of classic English country garden. So for me, it was, I love Vaughan Williams and I love Elgar. And even though, I'm nowhere near as good as those guys, Viva Piñata was my sort of attempt at that kind of English pastoral sound, if that's what you want to call it. And, I think that I really like writing that kind of music. Yeah, I guess if I wasn't working as employed as a media composer, I'd probably write that kind of music just for fun. I love that kind of just, very melodic, just tuneful, calming music. So it was, a real fantastic chance for me to get to write something like that, and just be able to do it and no one moan about it, So that was just a great thing to do. And then to get the BAFTA nomination, my God, I couldn't believe it. Like, that happens to other people, not me. So that was fantastic. And, the fact that got voted into the Classic FM Hall of Fame a couple of times, and all that, it was, it's amazing. I often talk about Viva Piñata as being one of my favorite things to do, and it really, really was. And then to go back and do Viva Piñata 2, I got to write more music for that. And I think first time round, you're not quite sure how far to push it, but I think I didn't do as much music for the second game because it's like an add-on. But I certainly tried, harder to write better music for the second game. And I always talk about, there's a tune called Bedtime Story, which, because I kind of knew at the time I was going to be leaving Rare. I hadn't told them yet, but, I didn't think I'd ever want to leave Rare. I liked being there so much, but it just wasn't working out for me at the time. And so that piece really is what, I guess, pouring my heart into that piece was like, that was that piece to me. And I do remember James, that was the last piece I played in that session, and James said to me, I should go out and thank the orchestra. So I went out onto the podium and Nick stood aside, and I sort of went, I just want to say thank you. And went, oh, sort of burst into tears. I couldn't really speak, and they're all like, oh God, you're a crazy man. But that, I guess that piece, it still, can make me cry if I think about it, when I listen to it. Equally tranquil from the first game. So, that's one of those moments that I think I'll never forget. That entire recording of those two games was really special to me.
Viva Piñata went on to be nominated for a BAFTA award for the Best Original Score in 2007. This is music from Viva Piñata, released at the end of 2006 for the Xbox 360, with music composed by Grant Kirkhope, again performed by the City of Prague Philharmonic Orchestra.
the best video game music coming out of your speakers. This is the 1UpBeat on Cinematic Sound Radio.
Grant Kirkhope's last day at Rare was July 18, 2008, after finishing the recording sessions for Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. This was just before that game and the second VIVA PIÑATA game would release. A few days later, it was announced that he was joining Big Huge Games. Kirkhope's one score while he was there was for the game Kingdoms of AMALUR Reckoning.
It got to a point for me I wanted to leave Rare. I just wasn't as happy when Microsoft took it over. It's not that was a bad thing. It just wasn't right for me. It suited lots of other people. And I did like it at the start. And it wasn't just that. Me and my wife, before we had kids, used to always vacation in America. That was our favorite place to go, like, LA or, San Francisco, Vegas, New York. I always thought, wouldn't it be great to kind of live in America and work there? Never thinking we'd ever get around to it. And I kind of half-heartedly applied for a couple of jobs over the years and never really thinking about it. And I applied for Big Huge Games. Me and my wife also said, at the point they say yes, we'll worry about it at that point. I never thought about it really. And then they said yes, it was like, oh, we really can go and do this and go and live in Baltimore. And we had kids, and then it was like, oh God, pull the kids out of school, etc. So probably not the best of times to do it. But we thought, well, why not? So, and Big Huge Games was different. It was Rare at a custom complex in the middle of like not lavish, lush green fields and grounds and lots of, in the middle of the countryside. And Big Huge Games was in an office block in Timonium in Baltimore. Very different, in one floor in a building, So it's kind of different to the way I was used to kind of, swanning about. But what attracted me to Big Huge Games was that when I did the interview for them, weeks before, I got interviewed by, anybody at the company can interview you. You get 2 people every half an hour for as long as it takes. And anybody can veto you. So even if everybody agrees to hire you and one person doesn't, you don't get hired. So that was I kind of felt like that was a super impressive way to go about things. And the studio was mega solid. Like it was full of really great talent. And I was shocked to how good they all were, really. So that was a big plus to me. And I thought the game looked great at the time. It was called Crucible back then, before it changed to Reckoning. And to get to do a big sprawling RPG was fantastic to me. In that kind of lore, that kind of sword and sorcery. I love that stuff.
There's a whole saga of controversy around this game, mostly around the business side of things. But I thought it was great. It played really well. It was interesting. It felt a little different from most games like it. It didn't just have that copy and paste feel that a lot of large games have. And of course, it had a fantastic score. This was more of a fantasy game in the traditional sense, so Kirkhope really wanted to go and show off some of that John Williams inspiration he has. AMALUR's score is big, epic, mysterious, action-packed, and it's just really cool. You definitely hear that Grant Kirkhope-ness in there every once in a while, that magical twinkle that he has, but it's a much more serious and mature score than some of the others that he's known for.
That made a difference to me, that game, because I'd never written anything that grand before. I feel like I really spent a lot of time thinking, how am I going to really push the boat out for this? So I literally listened to that John Williams, he's of course my hero, the first 3 Harry Potter soundtracks that he did. I listened to those over and over and over again in the car, to and from work every day for 4 years, and that's no exaggeration. That's all I listened to for that amount of time. I was trying to learn how to do that thing that he does so well. And I'm not saying that I did it, but I did my best. It really, I was trying to get that thing where, I think John Williams writes, massively elaborate music. It's very, ornamental. It's, he has that kind of big theme moment where you really get hit between the eyes with it. And then he goes to this kind of, I call it his treading water music, but that sounds insulting. It's not, where he just kind of go into this kind of manic, exciting music that's all over the place, like an idea every 2-3 seconds, which is incredible. And then he's right back on the money again when it's melody time, for the big theme, And I was trying to learn how to do that, to try to go, I need the big themes, but I need to learn to write all that woodwind ornamentation, all that kind of string ornamentation that he does so fantastically well. So, the first piece I really did that on was Baylor. That was the first boss piece that I sat down to write. And I thought, well, let's just see what I can do. So it was that thing where I wouldn't let a bar go by without feeling that I'd done something with it. There was something going on somewhere that was, more ornamentation to make it more exciting. I just tried to make every single bar as exciting as I could. When I finished that piece, I thought, well, you know what, that isn't that bad. And I was like thinking, maybe you can do this, kind of thing. So that was a real moment for me to kind of realize that maybe I could do it. And also at the time I was thinking, I'd like to have a crack at movies, and thinking that, you always think in the back of your mind, maybe I'm not good enough to do that. And at that point I thought, if I did get the chance to do a score of this nature, I wouldn't be scared to do it. It may not be great, but I'm sure I could do it, So, yeah, that mattered a lot. And I think it was definitely that Harry Potter thing there. I mean, I love Harry Potter anyway, and I love John Williams. And I guess that there are some of my favourite scores of his, because I just feel they just glisten with magic. I can't think of another word for it. And I was just trying to get some of that glistening into my music. I don't know if I managed it or not. You should let me know. I don't know, but I tried my best.
Big Huge Games, along with Kingdom of Amalur's co-developer, 38 Studios, had a full staff layoff later in 2012, which left Kirkhope as a freelance composer. There's definitely a niche following of people who love this game and its score, though, and whenever somebody brings it up on Twitter or elsewhere, Grant always reminds people of how much he loved working on the game. And it's a really wonderful score. And it's something a little different if you're usually used to Grant Kirkhope's banjo or other games that sound like that. This is something a little more exciting. It's a little more mature, for lack of a better term. Everything's so playful before that. This is music from Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, with music composed by Grant Kirkhope, performed by the City of Prague Philharmonic Orchestra.
The best music ever recorded for video games is here on the 1UpBeat with your host, Eric Silver.
Sadly, we've come to the end of this episode of the 1UpBeat, paying tribute to the music and career of Grant Kirkhope. And to end the show, we're going to highlight one of the most surprising games of recent years. There were rumors persisting throughout early 2017 about a strange game teaming up Mario and the Rabbids from the Rayman spin-off, Rayman's Raving Rabbids. Nobody really believed that this could be real at first, but rumors just kept on going. Just before E3 2017, Grant Kirkhope started teasing a new project he was working on. Your genius host put two and two together pretty quickly, and wouldn't you know, E3 rolls around, and the most unlikely crossover ever was revealed. A turn-based strategy crossover between Mario characters and Rabbids. On top of that, it looked beautiful, looked actually fun, and had music by Grant Kirkhope. All those rumors had people super negative on the game, acting like Nintendo lost their way completely, but were quickly shut up after having seen the gameplay footage.
Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle was a bit of a strange one at the start. I got a kind of a vague email from Gianmarco Zanna, who's the producer at Ubisoft Milan. And it was on LinkedIn. He just said to me, "Dear Mr. Kirkhope, we have a game we think you'd be a good fit for. You know, are you interested?" Kind of thing. And that was it. I said, "Of course I'm interested. You know, let me know all about it." So it took a little while to sign the NDA because it always takes a bit of time. And then I got an email. It was called Rabbids Kingdom Battle. And I was like, "Oh, that's cool," because you know I like the Rabbids because my kids watch the cartoons and I think they're really crazy. And I think in some respects they are the original Minions, really. They're just a bit stupid and they don't understand stuff and they're crazy and daft. And we loved the cartoons. We thought they were funny. So I thought, oh, this would be cool, you know. So they wanted to fly me out to meet me, kind of thing. So it was arranged that the guys from Milan would fly to Paris, Ubisoft Paris, and I'd fly them and meet there. So it must have been April, I don't know, 2014, 15, something like that. So I got, flown out there, very fancy. Got to the Ubisoft studio there, and I was kind of escorted through the back of the studio, through some security doors, through more security doors, and into this bit at the back that was like, private. I had to get a special key to get in. I was a bit thinking, this is a bit weird for a Rabbids game. Like, it's like nothing secret about the Rabbids, right? Anyway, so got into the final back bit and then escorted to a side room at the side of the main development space, where Davide Soliani and it looks like Romain, but I think it's pronounced Roma Brio, the audio director, was there, and sat down to talk about the music for the game. So Davide said, "Well, I should show you the game, should I?" So he turned the TV on, and Mario was there on the screen, and I just kind of thought, probably they'd been playing Mario, before I got there because they were bored, and then. Davide started to move Mario around. I was saying, what's this? He said, "Well, it's a Mario game. No one told you?" I was like, "No." So at that point, all the colour drained from my face, and I started to have a panic attack, probably thinking, how on earth am I going to write music for a Mario game? Because, Koji Kondo is a legend, and I'm not, and how am I going to do that without everybody hating me? Without my kids never speaking to me ever again? Not that they do speak to me in the first place, mind you. Yeah. So I remember Davide and Ramar said to me, "We thought you sat there sort of quite quiet for the first hour. We really thought you didn't like the game. It's just because I was in such panic, thinking, how am I going to do this?" I think it was equal parts sort of panic, equal parts excitement. Who would, for God's sake, if you told me in 1995 I started working on a Mario game, I would never have believed it. And that is absolutely ridiculous. Like, how on earth would that even come to pass? So, we spent, I guess 2.5 years working on that game together. And I talked to Davide and Ramar, every day. I mean, I wrote music every day for that game for 2.5 years easily. It was 2.5 hours of music, and we definitely talked every day. It was like a full on thing, And when I was doing the cinematic sequences, my son would often see me doing it. He'd kind of go, "Dad, that's Mario you're on that screen right there," and you get those moments where you kind of go, "God, he's right. It is Mario." And so, during that 2.5 years, towards the end of it, we're getting to the kind of E3 unveiling, and quite a lot of the game got leaked, or like certainly screenshots, and everyone knew it was Mario Rabbids, and everyone was going, "This sounds like a stupid idea. It's going to be awful." And from the outside, when you hear Mario Rabbids, you think, God, that sounds like a daft idea. But it's not till you see it that you kind of and play it, you kind of go, oh my God, it's the best idea ever. So that was, it was a bit rough getting towards E3 when people were it was getting, quite a panning in the press. People going, this is going to be dreadful. But when E3 came around and we did the big unveiling at the theatre in the Orpheum Theatre in LA, and I was sat next to Davide, one space down from Davide because he saved me a seat. And Mr. Mimosa came on. Even though I knew he was going to be there, I still jumped out of my skin when he got on stage, And he called out Davide and said, and Davide started to cry. And, it meant such a lot to us all to get to that point and everyone go, God, this is great. We can't, but this is really good because no one could believe it, So I think we had a massive outpouring of emotion. And just after the theatre show, me and Davide went across the street and sat in this kind of sandwich bar, and I just did a sandwich and a cup of coffee each, and just sat there looking at each other in silence, like, God, did that just happen? Like a bit like that, sort of in shock. And that game's just gone from strength to strength. It's still selling very well now. It's crazy how it's not really, if ever, it's sort of accelerated in its sales towards the end, towards this time. It's just mad. So that was amazing.
The score is a glorious return to form for Grant Kirkhope. That wacky, whimsical style that everyone knows and loves about him is in full display here, to complement the insane concept. There's great hectic music, epic battle music, and wonderful rearrangements of classic Mario tunes. Make sure you tune in for that great opera also. You heard that correctly.
So I had to try and find some kind of sound that would work for Rabbids and Mario. So I had to kind of have a bit of Mario, a bit of Crazy Rabbids, and a bit of me, stick it together and try and come up with a sound. And that's what I think I did, at least in my head. Cause again, it didn't need to be like Nintendo would have done. Nintendo said to Davide, you can take Mario and you can break him, do things that we can't do. So equally in the music, I wanted to make sure that I did things that perhaps you wouldn't hear in Nintendo music, while still being respectful, because Koji Kondo is a legend. So a couple of occasions that I had to rearrange Koji Kondo's stuff. So on the Peach's Castle theme, Davide said we'd love to use the Mario Castle theme from Mario 64, which is my favorite Mario game because that was my time at Rare. So I thought, oh God, this is going to be yet again super scary, but what a fantastic chance to get to to play with Koji Kondo's fantastic arrangement. And so I was trying to think how am I going to do it. So I thought the best thing to do is to kind of split his theme up into little bits and kind of have a bit of him, a bit of me, a bit of him, a bit of me. Kind of do it like that. And thinking at some point he's going to have to hear this and go, all right, it's all right, Grant. Oh, it's rubbish. Do it again. Like that. So. When I finally sent it across and Ubisoft sent it over, they liked it. And it was, that was super flattering that the Nintendo sound team would think that I'd done a decent job. That was really flattering. And I guess that was part of the reason that I think I went on to get the Super Smash Brothers thing, because I think they felt I could doing a rearrangement of music, but I could do that, And then so I could do a rearrangement of my own piece, like Spiral Mountain for the Smash Brothers thing. But also I had to do some of the little game over and sort of win-lose ditties with orchestra. So I had to take Koji Kondo's Super Nintendo the SNES stuff and make it into orchestra stuff. So which was easy enough. Or I thought it was. So I think I'd done the game over ditty, which is like da 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 da, something like that. And I'd got some of the harmonies mixed up, not wrong notes, just in the wrong register, I think. Because I had to sort of work it out by ear. And I got a little email from Nintendo saying sort of, very polite, dear Mr. Kirkhope, we love your rendition of whatever it was, the game over theme, but could you please just look at the harmony? And they sent me a little bit of sheet music to show me how it went. And I was just thinking, that's one of those moments where I was like, oh my God, I just got a bit of sheet music from Nintendo, like telling me how the game over. That was just amazing to me. Like, that's one of those kind of pinch yourself things, like, is this really happening, So that was mega special. And doing that whole game was special. I got to, play with Mario and the Mario characters in that universe with the Rabbids and get a bit of myself in there, and just back to Prague again to record it. Well, we did about 45, 50 minutes of music for that with Prague. The rest was my MIDI stuff here. But you know, when I look back at my career, I'm definitely going to go, my God, I got to write music for Mario. I'm never going to forget that. That was just incredible.
Grant Kirkhope would go on to work on other indie games, including working closely with Playtonic Games on ukulele, which is the spiritual successor to both Banjo-Kazooie and Donkey Kong Country, and even became the first Western arranger in the Super Smash Bros. Series for his rearrangement of Spiral Mountain to go along with the Banjo-Kazooie DLC for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. For a guy prominently known for a 22-year-old game, he definitely stays relevant today, which is much more than most game composers can say for themselves. This is music from Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, music composed by Grant Kirkhope, performed by the City of Prague Philharmonic Orchestra. I'd like to take this moment to say thank you so much to Grant Kirkhope for his help on this episode and his input. It's been such a joy and a pleasure and an honor, of course, getting to include him, for me, as one of the biggest fans of his work around, and I will make that claim because it's my show and I can do it. It's such a special opportunity. I hope that this episode did some justice to his work. Please enjoy the music.
thousand throngs ever since Donkey Kong, smithering down every pipe, despite his plum-shaped body type. Who's gonna run in fear while screaming Mamma Mia? Who leaves me grey and grim? Oh, what does Peach see in him? Mario! With great joy in my heart, each time I watch Mario Kart, you're first and doing so well, but here come the Spanish shell. And now you and your Robbie friends have finally met your end. Just let me catch my breath, then I see you to death.
Thank you for listening to Cinematic Sound Radio. I want to thank Tim Burden for providing his voice for all the bumpers and stingers you hear throughout the program, and David Coscina for providing Cinematic Sound Radio's theme music. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please email us at cinematicsound@yahoo.com. You can find us on social media at CinSound Radio on Twitter and Cinematic Sound on Facebook. And if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, please take a moment right now to rate and review the show. It really helps us rise through the ranks and helps potential new listeners find the show. And don't forget to check out Cinematic Sound Radio at cinematicsound.net.
If you want to find us, take a look in the book. We're on Piñata Island, come take a look. We're filling up the fun to give your party a swing. You know the party's our thing. Viva Piñata, we dance in the sun. You got Piñata, the party's begun. Just taste our candy, we'll sure you'll agree. Saying piñatas are the ones for me. Saying piñatas are the ones for me.
Okay. Thank you.